Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today we are revisiting one of our very, very first episodes of the lockdown files. Very wide-eyed with what the hell's going on around us and where does all this take us? And a year on, fascinating to see how the company's fared and everything you've done. We spoke again. You came onto one of the debate shows and spoke about the wider market after the dust has settled a little bit. And again, we sort of lurch on things move at 1,000 miles an hour at the moment. I've been extremely buoyed to see all of your news on social and sort of hear about the sort of continued excellent journey of the business over the last few months. But for people who haven't had that pleasure and that journey or saw the first episode, just give us a quick reintroduction of ipushpull, will you?
Yeah, sure. ipushpull, we're a data as a service platform. So we work with all the kind of financial participants across the market, from brokers and IDBs to buy side to sell side to trading desks to sales desks to ops. And basically the problem that we're solving is around the complexity of data sharing. We want to make it very easy for people to connect data from one source to another and then bring that real-time data integrated into workflows that people use day in, day out in the applications they use as well. Yeah, we've been going for 5-6 years now. 3 of us as co-founders. Our background is kind of trading technology. We come from that world. And now we're very much selling into pretty much the OTC space across the board, which is something that lives in emails, spreadsheets, copy-paste, Bloomberg chats, a very non-standardized world. And what we're doing is bringing in very easy-to-use tools and applications to help streamline those workflows and then ultimately automate them. I think
and I sort of hesitate to use the word beneficiaries of it at times like this, but one of the things that I've seen as a common theme, through this year's FinTech focuses that we've done, has been data has been one of those areas which people have suddenly realised actually, we can do this a lot better. There's a lot of opportunities here to innovate, to utilise data to catch up. I know you've been involved in conversations that I've been in at various different phases about the sort of lackluster approach to data in the financial markets over recent years. Everyone's spoken about it. No one's really had a clue about how they can really maximize it and take it further forward. One of the things I think this pandemic's done is focus people's attention to say, look, here's something where we can really improve efficiencies and improve return and get better. And I think there's companies like yours that have seen problems and taken these problems and really shown the efficiency gains that have been able to do that. So I'm really keen to sort of see how, from our very first conversation where we were talking through the sort of carnage that we were seeing out in the marketplace at that sort of stage. And both of us would have sat there, I'm sure, in our businesses thinking, what's this hold? What's the market going to take? What are our customers going to be doing? Who's going to be buying at this sort of stage? How long is it going to last? There were all these questions going through when we were last talking. We've had a year's worth of hindsight in there. Talk us through 2020 and how your business has been able to take the negative and turn it into a positive, and really seen that sort of evolution over the last years. And also, we were speaking a lot last time out about your journey of having gone through a couple of fairly seismic interruptions in the past in your career, 2008. In particular, the dotcom bubble before that, things there which have had this. It wasn't your first rodeo. Tell me a little bit about how those experiences have impacted this, if at all, or is it something completely different? And how ipushpull has gone from strength to strength. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, no, sure. So I'm just thinking back now. I remember the comments where I was regurgitating comments from the Microsoft CEO, and it was that famous quote. I think that was them. Just kind of everyone was using about. They've seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. And that was, I think it was Microsoft earnings like the night before or something like that.
How's that a year ago?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I would say that theme has continued. And I'm sure, the Microsoft CEO would probably say similar. We've kind of seen companies who we've been working with that are probably quite far along on their kind of digital transformation cycle. And I think those particular firms and banks that we kind of work with have really managed to gain a significant edge against competitors where they were thinking about remote working kind of way before everyone started to look at it. they're already looking at how you can change desktop layout, anything from changing desktop layouts on Bloomberg to how can I remember there was a theme actually when it all kicked off, again thinking a year ago now, when you had all the off-site kind of redundant offices that are sitting in Essex and Surrey and Onslow or something, and people have turned up at these offices. Well, I remember there was one case where a bank turned up to their emergency office that's in a completely different place, and then 3 other banks turned up on the same day, all wanting to use the same kit, because the company that provided this stuff had never accounted for the fact that there may be 3 banks this all happens to at the same time. So that was quite an interesting thing, where the banks that had been thinking about that way ahead of time, they kind of had an edge. But on the technology side, everyone is used to Zoom now. Zoom is like a verb. You've got Teams and chat and Symphony and all these different things, which are now just used as that's just part of your normal working day.
Absolutely.
And even in the course of probably the year or so that's gone by, there are people that are using something like Microsoft Teams just for video conferencing to start. And then after a couple of months, they're like, oh, hang on, you can do some chat on this as well. And now those people are beginning to look at that, are thinking, oh, I've seen someone use a chatbot. How can we use that for our business? And you kind of seen all of this stuff has been forced to happen. I think it was, again, going back to regurgitating things that I said last time, it was this kind of Cambrian explosion of technology, where all of a sudden a few different things in a melting pot happen and it kind of explodes. And you've seen that definitely in technology that's available, but more importantly, the technology probably hasn't changed exponentially over the last year. What has changed exponentially is the mindsets of people working in big financial institutions, because now they're open to kind of dipping their toe in the water through to jumping straight in. And one area is obviously around cloud. I think we were talking before, cloud for us was a really big challenge, trying to get banks and financial institutions to onboard us using the cloud. Whereas now it's not really a thing anymore. So I think that's helped our business significantly. I think in terms of you're talking about data and people sitting on what was a buzzword maybe 5 years ago, data lakes, and people getting all this data and just shoving it in somewhere because at some point in the future you might be able to do something with it. I think that time is now coming where people are looking at how can you monetize data like that? How can you use it to influence existing workflows or to provide, using machine learning, sitting on top of your data, you can learn things from these data sets that are sitting there for other use cases and workflows you're working on. So it's been a fascinating time in the last year, and touch wood, we've been very lucky. I think people who are in software and particularly FinTech have been very lucky. There's no other word for it really. I could have set up a restaurant, and it would have been the worst year ever. But fortunately, I think I'm blessed that I'm in software.
I think it's interesting as well that even in those sort of industries, that the restaurant industry, whilst it's been there, innovation.
They've innovated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the digital, those who've adopted and adapted to the times, they might not have thrived as much as they would do with the footfall, etc. But again, I wonder about the efficiencies that they've been able to raise. You've seen some brilliant things that people have been able to do and how they've pivoted, and it's it's wonderful to see that sort of thing. And tech's very much at the heart of it. And like you say, that you say you're fortunate to be in software and in FinTech. Great market to be in there, but you have to make it, take advantage of that situation. And there's loads of companies who have who've been in the same situation, who haven't necessarily fared the same way. There's been people there who've attacked the market and the opportunity and said, right, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And there's been people there who've pulled up the hatches and waited for it to pass. And I think those ones who've really grabbed the bull by the horns, for want of another cliche, they're the ones who've done that. Yes, you can be in a lucky situation, but it's how you take those sort of things on board that I think is really relevant. And that to me is something which I think, from everything I've seen, heard, spoken about, you guys have been able to do really, really well, right?
That is the advantage of being an agile, small company. You can pivot and change and take advantage of opportunities that are out there. It was Albert Einstein that said, "In every great crisis lies opportunity." And I think, like you said, some companies have really gone to town with that and created either new businesses or streamline their businesses and make them more efficient. So yeah, I agree. We've seen that, anything from people in financial markets all the way to Deliveroo. I think are looking to IPO in the next couple of weeks, aren't they? They've been a beneficiary of this, and that's formed an ecosystem. Same as what we're doing in financial markets, but something like Deliveroo has helped an ecosystem thrive around catering and food and restaurants. So it's a very interesting time. I think you also asked about a kind of previous market events. So between the three of us as founders, we've been through the '87 crash, we've been through the 2000 stock market crash, we've been through 2008 credit crunch. I wasn't around for the '87 one. That was one of the other guys.
I was going to say you were doing well on that.
But you do learn from kind of these events, and fortunately, again, at least in 2008, I was around for that one, and we were in a business that was providing real-time financial news to traders. So actually, again, we were a beneficiary of that. Again, a bit of timing, right place, right time, but we were providing real-time news and analysis for people trading the markets, and there was a lot of real-time news coming out at that time. We used to come in, there was so much news to cover. We used to come in on Sunday lunchtime to start prepping up for Monday morning, because there'd be so many announcements coming out, and similar to kind of what you've got now, where probably in the early part of COVID, where you've government announcements coming out saying we're going to inject this much money, we're going to do this with quantitative easing, we're doing this with a stimulus program. All of that does have an impact on your day-to-day business as well. And I think we kind of chatted before about kind of macroeconomics. That's kind of my background in my previous startup, and having a handle on that has actually been very useful in actually running a company as well, because you're aware of the bigger kind of wider world out there. And when something happens over here, the trickle-down effect will happen at some point. But if you could be ahead of that, I was actually in China in December 2018, and I was in Shanghai because we just picked up an award from CFEX, which is like the biggest fixed income kind of exchange in China. And that was probably when there was early stages maybe of COVID kind of happening and spreading around. Obviously not in Shanghai. I hope I wasn't the person who was the super spreader.
I knew it.
But in terms of that, we are actually talking to CFEX, a lot during that time, and listening to them and what they were talking about. It kind of we were quite aware of that situation early on. So it's always about. I mean, you run your own business, Toby. It's about having your kind of pilot's cockpit of all these different instruments flashing up all the time, and things changing, and needles and things blinking and flashing and so on. And you've got to be able to read those different indicators and then know how you change course or not, or you put more throttle on, you take throttle off, you move out of the way. All of those things is again, it's just part of the hundreds of, if not thousands of things you need to know when you're running a business, and particularly a startup. But I think if you can then get ahead of that, and you've got the ability to ride on the back of this this massive paradigm shift towards digitization and digital transformation, and again, it's about convergence of different things, products, events, whatever it may be. But if you can get to that sweet spot where these different things are converging, that's when you can kind of ride the wave along with it. And I think we've been lucky enough to be able to probably ride that wave to a certain extent, because of things like moving towards chat. That we've seen a big shift in the last year where financial institutions are moving away from sharing files or copying and pasting data from an application into an email and then sending that. So we've seen this kind of move away from that more into chat, because chat is more prevalent now. If I'm now working remotely and I've just got a laptop and maybe one screen, I won't have a work phone sitting there like I used to have on my desk. So then it kind of reverts to chat. So making those workflows more efficient. that's kind of one thing that I think we've been a benefit of. And then also this idea of data sharing and making it more seamless, because everyone always says, data is like the new oil, and people are seeing data as a commodity now. But it's all well and good having data sitting. Well, if you take how many was it? Is it Venezuela? Yeah, Venezuela is like sitting on the world's largest oils reserves by, I think, 10x of what the rest of the world is. But you can't tap into it and get into it easily. So it's all well and good having this big kind of reserve of oil or data or whatever it might be. But if you can't get it out or get it in a usable format, then it's useless. So I think what people are doing now is, because of the tools that are available now, and that is then enabled by using the cloud, you can then access this data, do cool stuff with it. Like you could be using the machine learning algorithms out of the box on Google Cloud or AWS or Azure. They're so easy to configure and use. And you can start looking at the data and doing clever stuff with it. And then you want to be able to deliver it out to your clients or to your team or to end users. And you want to do that in a kind of a seamless fashion, like you can do when you're just using kind of consumer apps on your phone. It's that that real ease of use. And again, that's played into what we're doing, because we allow data to connect into any one of 20 different end user applications. And it's pretty much the same set of integrations that we had a year ago. We've added a few more, but I think, the market's kind of catching up with us now. And it's like, that stuff you showed us a year ago, we can use that now. And again, that's been helped by some of these barriers have been brought down through cloud digital transformation and so on. So it's a great time to be a fintech at the moment. And I think, like you said, with the different market events that are out there, there's always a lot. You're always learning. That's one thing with, again, running your own business. If not anyone in any walk of life, you always need to be learning, and it's something which sometimes you're kind of laying the bricks, in front of you as you're kind of walking along, or laying the pavement in front of you as you're walking along. Other times you might be a little bit ahead of the curve, but it's kind of making sure that you're always, you've got an eye on something a little bit longer term. So if you do deviate or have to pivot at all, you kind of come back to where you want to be.
I think it's fascinating hearing you say that, and there's so much to dig into in what you're talking about. But that sort of ability, as we were just going back to see an opportunity and then make sure you capitalize on it. And capitalizing on it, by saying that, I'm not talking about the greed of say making hay while the sun shines. What I'm talking about is capitalizing on how you are able to translate that to your customers to show the value that you can add in that particular instance. And there are companies there who've absolutely smashed that, and there's companies there who've just missed a golden opportunity, I think, to really cement their product as something that's going to add value to a marketplace. So let's focus on that. Tell us how it's gone for the business, for ipushpull, and what the results of 2020 have looked like for you, and then in turn where that sets it up for 2021, because this video coincides with you being listed on the most influential fintechs of 2021. So congratulations for that. It'll be in the Financial Technologist magazine. Really love seeing you and the business in this, because I've loved it since we first started speaking and seeing that sort of story. And I think it's a really valuable area that you're able to deliver. So I was thrilled to see you on the list. And there's some brilliant names in there who are tied by some very common threads all the way through that. And I think you embody the vast majority of those threads as well as a business. But tell us a little bit about what that's meant, that sort of opportunities look like physically for ipushpull, and then what 2021 looks like for the rest of the business as well.
Well, firstly, thank you for working with us around the Financial Technologist magazine and everything that you've done to I know you've always we've had interesting conversations, and you've helped kind of spread the word, so I thank you for that. In terms of business, I guess one of the, and again, an advantage of being a startup is the ability to deliver quickly. Speed to market and being fast to market is important, irrelevant of what industry you're in, particularly when there's an opportunity there. As soon as you see an opportunity, you want to kind of go ahead and do something with it. But if that means you've got to wait for someone to build something for 6 months, then then you might miss that opportunity. So speed to market has always been one of our kind of strong selling points, because we've got, we've kind of got, low code workflow builders, we've got off the shelf integrations that companies can use and so on. And relaying that over to customers, we've signed up quite a lot of people in the last year, but anything from some of the leading global IDBs that have like white labeled our platform, and they're able now to deliver data that was previously just sitting in in-house applications. They can now share that with their clients, so that our customers happy, their clients are getting more data that's more useful to them, through to the world's largest OTC energy trading venue is now using ipushpull as well, again for getting data, aggregating it in real time, normalizing it, and pushing it into a trading venue. So we've had some big customer wins, which has been fantastic. Thanks to our team. We're still pretty lean, and we kind of want to keep it that way, because I think, again, having some of the experience learned from previous companies and some of the previous market events as well, where you can always keep all your fat trimmed, essentially, and operate very lean, which then makes you more profitable, and more attractive to investors. And I think the investor thing we kind of spoke about before. I saw something in the FT this morning about VC investment is its strongest in a decade right now.
Without question.
And it's and we get people, kind of approaching us all the time and so on. It's kind of every time someone comes to me, I'm focusing on kind of the business and making revenue. So, come back in 6 months, and I've just continued to do that. And because fortunately, we've been able to kind of build the business on revenue and customers and kind of upselling to our customers as well. So that's always that thing with when you're building a company. It's like, do you just try and build it via revenue and you maintain your kind of share of it, or do you go out and get funding of a really good partner who can help you take it from here to here? And that's the thing that we're kind of toying with at the moment. It's
a really interesting conundrum, isn't it?
Good place to be in. But I don't know how much you've been involved in kind of fundraising yourself, but it's a very, very time-consuming business.
Well, it's time-consuming. It's stressful, isn't it? I'm speaking to loads of people at the moment who are going through that or been through it, and if we can talk about Zoom fatigue, we can definitely talk about investment exhaustion, because it is a fundamentally trying period for people to go through, and taking your eye off the board. That's around a management team. Look, you're fortunate that you've got a team of 3 founders there who where the load can be spread. But I know, having spoken to a few people recently, just how when it falls on one person's shoulders to deal with that and run the business, that it can be a dangerous phase as much as it can be a positive one as well, right? And I've had a conversation just a couple of hours ago with someone who's just gone through and probably was in that situation of being self-funded and having that for a similar sort of time, a little bit less maybe, and then probably thinking, right, we're never going to take that investment, but recognizing it can be that accelerator with the market opportunity as well. So it becomes one of those sort of very interesting conversations to be had. But it's great that that people are knocking at your door for that, because you're right, there is so much pent up aggression, I think, in that VC. There's so much institutional money out there at the moment to be putting into the right sort of things that it can really be the petrol on the proverbial bonfire to take it further forward. So an interesting decisions to be made, I would presume. Yeah,
no, totally. And it's being a startup and being on this side of the fence, it's the way you want it to be for a change. Normally all of the advantages are on the other side of the fence, and in times tough, investors might be overly squeezing some of the companies they're working with, whereas now the shoe's on the other foot. So that's why it's important to find the right partner,
definitely,
rather than just taking some money off someone. It's not about that. It's about finding someone you can work with, who can bring some real value to your business as well,
and shares those values as well.
Yes. And also and completely buys into your vision rather than it being an investment. And that's and I think it's just finding those kind of right partners to work with. So those kind of discussions are ongoing at the moment. You're asking about our business and kind of where we're going from here. So think as a kind of a background with the whole COVID situation and where we are in that cycle, and hopefully people are going back to work and vaccines and all of that. I mean, I see kind of irrelevant to our business. I see 2021 being massive. I don't know if you remember when the Olympics were on in 2012.
I remember very, very well.
There were loads of people. Do you remember? Because there was lots of people who lived in London who kind of left London because they thought it was going to be horrible and loads of tourists and stuff. And what actually happened is, I think lots of people left, but then lots of like really kind of energetic, happy people flew in from around the world. And it was like a Rio Carnival for 2 weeks, wasn't it? It was brilliant. I kind of see that happening here in London and the UK. Probably as soon as we get to the early part of the summer. And I think that's good because everyone's in a good, happy place. But then that's going to feed back into this self-perpetuating cycle. People are then spending money. More products need to be made. And it kind of goes on and on. So I think that's a really good backdrop to be.
Well, I think alongside that, sorry to cut in. I think absolutely that feel-good factor is one part of it. Plus, there's going to be some just as incredible economic data as there was on the negative side last year. That if everything goes to plan, touch wood, we should be seeing exactly the same sort of bounce, particularly with people going, spending a lot more time in the UK holiday-wise. That there will be a huge bounce to the hospitality sector, and then that will drive things further forward. But you've also got in two of both here and in the US, governments who have an awful lot to win by PRing positivity. And if you look at the UK's work on the vaccine race, Chancellor has put a lot of money into the economy to really make sure that works and that stimulus is returned for them. I think there is every bit, and even when you look at the sort of the commitment to post Brexit as well, because we forget about that a little bit. The Brexit's kind of fallen off the radar from quite how prevalent it was just even a year ago.
I mean, you talk about Brexit. That was the one road bump that concerns me. Because obviously people had forgotten about it, and then there was kind of this kind of last minute rush in back end of last year, and all of the big financial institutions we were talking to, the kind of who are in our pipeline, we're trying to sign them up. All of that just ground to a complete halt. Couldn't even get hold of people, and it did concern me. The first part of January when people were just completely head down on Brexit was one thing. And then the other thing, if you remember that first week back in January when the lockdown, because Christmas was Christmas and people were just, probably drinking too much and just trying to enjoy what they could. Or maybe that was just me. But then you got to that first week of January and there was a little bit of shell shock because it was like, oh, we're back in this again. And I think the first couple of weeks, and we actually had one big contract who were trying to get over the line and they came back and said, oh, actually, our budget's on hold. We're going to look at this in 6 months' time. And I was like, oh, that's potentially, back to that pilot cockpit. I had something flashing up at me then. And I was probably more concerned than anyone else in the firm. And I was worried about that. But then I think after that little shell shock period, stuff started to come back again and conversations started happening again. The only ones that we weren't having any conversations with banks probably at all until at least beginning of February, because everyone was just completely head down on Brexit because there's so much red tape I think people were dealing with. But going back to what we've kind of seen in the last year as well, like you were talking about the feel-good factor and government programs and all of that. I think a lot of people fail to remember that the period we're living in, there couldn't be a better time to be in. If you look at when the Spanish flu happened, and I forget the numbers now. Was it 50 million or 500 million people
extraordinary
had it?
Numbers.
It was like 20% of the world, or whatever the numbers were. It was a ridiculous number. And if that happened now, like you saw the markets obviously sell off and people panic and so on. But it would have been tenfold if we were back in that situation.
Definitely.
And look at how quickly, in history, it's the first time ever a vaccine's gone from, they decoded the DNA breakdown or genetic breakdown of the virus sent that out, kind of open sourced it, sent it out to everyone. And independently, there's how many different vaccines are out. You only hear about kind of a couple, but I think there's like 30 of them that are out there.
That's extraordinary.
And people forget that. And so that's due to technology. That's due to people sharing information, sharing data. And you've got to look on the bright side of things. And there's so many amazing things that have happened in last year. There's lots of people it's probably sucked a lot, but that's a short-term road bump. In the longer term, everything that's happened in the last year has been for the benefit, I think, for everyone. Like we were just talking before, you just said you've been exercising over the last 6 months. You probably feel better about yourself. You've lost weight. You look better. You look younger.
Stop it.
But all of the that's just one thing of thousands of things that that are good things that have happened in the last year, and it's about the feel good factor. It's about positivity. It's about there's never been a better time to be alive. There's an abundance of technology and money being put into really good initiatives. And it's important that people, there's a lot of doom-mongerers and naysayers that, focus on lots of bad stuff. It's even interesting what's happened, obviously, in the last year as well with Trump. Since Biden's come in, you've not really heard about him that much, which is, he's just doing his job and getting on with it, as opposed to being on social media all day long.
That's the beauty of being muted on social media, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, no, it's a great time to be running a business.
One of the things I'm really interested in is, for those positives that have come out of it. There's obviously some negatives as well, but there's also how we turn those negatives into positives moving further forward. And I've been noticing that you've been involved in work in FinTech as a program, and this I think is really, really important. And it's important to shed a light on, because for all the beneficiaries of what's been happening, there's obviously been people who've lost people, but there's been the impact it's had on our young people, and that goes through from school age kids who've lost an awful lot of time in school through to graduates who, particularly in the work from home model, has been a difficult sort of lost generation, and we've got to make sure that we're putting some thought into that. I know you've got a lot of investment into that as well, and you've been helping and mentoring and helping show FinTech as the pathway for people to get into it. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Yeah, sure. I'm very passionate about kind of helping young people and mentoring. And one of the reasons is because I had no help when I was kind of growing up. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I didn't have any help. Didn't have any friends in high places. So I kind of did it all the hard way and kind of built it up just through kind of blood, sweat, and tears. But I think now that I'm still quite young, really, but I think I've still got a decent amount of experience in setting up businesses and running them and growing them and so on. And I think there's a lot of shortcuts, you could take, because if I could go back to a younger version of myself when I was 18 or 20, there's a lot of shortcuts and wisdom you could impart to my younger self that would have saved a hell of a lot of time. And you would have had something better to show for it. And I'm not talking about money. I'm just talking about probably everything in life. You probably have something far more impactful if you kind of started earlier. So what I wanted to do, it started off where I was talking to my old school, and I kind of said, look, when I was at school, there was no careers advice, and I think you did a pretty shoddy job, really. And I said, so there's something that we can do.
They like to hear that, don't they?
and it's obviously all those people have changed now, so it was fine. And I kind of started helping out there, and we built, with me and a few other people, we built something called the Pillars of Possibility program that's been launched at this school, and now we're looking to roll it out in other schools as well. So that's kind of one thing I'm doing. But work in FinTech, that is actually I kind of got introduced to a whole bunch of graduates and students through a company called Amplify Trading, which my brother runs. And they kind of teach trader education and so on. And I did a little slot about FinTech. And I was kind of down to speak for half an hour. There was about 80 people on this class, and then on Zoom, obviously. And then I ended up speaking for about an hour and a half. And all of the questions I was getting from this group were like, I never really knew what FinTech was. I heard it. I thought you needed to be a developer to do it. It sounds really interesting. What courses can I do? How can I learn more? And I was getting all these same questions. And on the back of that, I then kind of, there was a handful of that group, but I kind of picked them out because they were kind of very proactive with me. And I said, look, there's obviously a massive knowledge gap here between I'm in fintech and it's this massive growing, explosive industry with money being thrown at it and loads of jobs, and it's really interesting. But then if you're not in it, then you're out of it. And if you're out of it, you just don't have a clue what it is. And it was just kind of breaking that barrier down and then giving young people that are kind of coming into the market the opportunity, the skills, the advice to be able to get into this very hot industry. And I think it has been brilliant timing because you had the Khalifa report last week. Exactly. About their fintech recommendations, which the government's taken pretty much all of them on board about providing kind of what we wanted to achieve with work in fintech was kind of inspiring and guiding students and young people to a career in fintech. And the Khalifa report recommendations are actually saying exactly the same stuff. So so I'm kind of reaching
ahead of your time again.
Yeah, but again, it's about an opportunity, isn't it? And important for me was, obviously, I've got a day job. I'm CEO of ipushpull, but we've been spending a couple of hours each week in the evening and on the weekends and chatting on WhatsApp and so on. And it's important to always have like a bias for action, because I could be strategizing all this stuff till the cows come home, and I kind of was to a certain extent. And I just got to a point I was like, look, just screw it. Let's just get something out there. And we actually I started to do video interviews, but video editing is the right pain, and you need someone who can do it, and it takes time, and you need a decent PC. You need to know how to use Adobe Premiere Pro and all that stuff. So we kind of started to go down that route, and in the end, we're like, this is taking too long. Let's just do podcasts. Let's start with podcasts. That's our first content offering, and we can start adding all these extra kind of layers on top of that, and then building out kind of our product and platform roadmap from there. And what I really want to do is get these 5 kind of graduates, or maybe some new ones, and get them to start a business and run it themselves. And I just kind of step away and just help them and advise them and mentor them. And so I wanted to be able to provide content and advice around fintech for people trying to break into the market, and also for the team that I'll be working with in working fintech, impart on them some of the knowledge and wisdom that I have around running a business, and hopefully they can take that and run with it, because that would be brilliant.
That'd be awesome.
There's nothing more satisfying than teaching someone and then they can take it and then do something with it. That's one of the greatest things that you can do in life.
I love everything about that. And look, we're very happy to sort of help in any which way we can, because I think it's so important. I think there is there's a bottleneck issue that's already there, but it's only going to grow over the next couple of years. And we saw that in 2008 with what I would call a sort of a staggered hiatus of generation where you're waiting for people in graduate levels to be able to come back into industry. And it probably went through till 11, 12 until you sort of really started seeing it open up. And I think it's really important to give those vehicles in a space which is crying out for talent, to be able to make sure that in 5 years' time we have that talent who's invested in now to be able to really take it further forward. So loved hearing about it. Matthew, for other people who've listened and want to hear more about ipushpull or want to hear more about the work you're doing in working fintech as well, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yes, it's you can just email me, matthew.cheung@ipushpull.com, or it's matt@workingfintech.com. Perfect.
Well, listen, thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you back on the show again. Always love this conversation with you, because there's real insight, there's real optimism, there's real enthusiasm and passion for what you're doing. And I love this sort of additional piece now about giving something back and seeing the ability for young people to really become part of this great world that we're working in at the moment, and maximize the next generation of it as well. So lovely talking to you again, and glad everything's gone so well.
Oh, thank you, Toby.
No problem at all. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.